Now, the cool thing about the buttons in Marvelous is that we can create our own buttons, and they don't have to be buttons necessarily. They can be some kind of objects for design purposes or for aesthetical purposes. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to create a few buttons on this character. Now, since we have only one button in the button look, we need to add another one, and to do that we can either copy the one that we have right now, or we can add a new one. And I'm going to rename this into spikes. So to create a new shape for the button, there are two ways to do that. The first one, we can go into material, button, and then choose register button. Or instead, and in a more efficient manner, we can go in here into the property editor, and inside the editor, right next to the icon and this little triangle, there is a plus sign. If we click on this on the sign, we get a new window. It's going to be an option for the name, so I'm going to call this spike. Then we need to select the object itself, and it has to be in OBJ. I'll go and select the spike, and for the thumbnail we can choose whatever picture we want. So I'm going to go with a picture of William Defoe. So I'm going to click OK, and it says registered as a button preset. Click OK, and now in here, as you can see, we have William Defoe for our spike, which is kind of cool. Now, to assign the spike itself, we need to select the object that we want the spikes to be assigned to. And then click this little icon right next to the trash bin. If I click that, we get to see some cool spikes on our character. So I hope you understand the idea behind this. We can create, as I said, we can create basically anything we want. So it doesn't have to be just buttons. It doesn't have to be spikes. It can be any object that you choose or design, which is a very cool feature. And if for some reason when you create an object and you assign it as a button, and it doesn't look anything like the object that you created in inside of your modeling program, try going into the this object property and changing the thickness, because the first time I did those spikes, the thickness was set to to default. I don't remember, 2 millimeters, something like that, and so they looked this way. And to make them look like they're supposed to, just play around with the thickness setting.
If you enjoy this content or find it useful, please consider supporting me by buying me a cup of coffee via the link in the description.
One thing to mention about the creation of the subjects, for the spikes I was using 3ds Max, and this is how it was positioned before I exported this as OBJ. As you can see, it's right in the middle of all the axes, and z-axis is pointing well, vertically, and the spike itself is pointing into the z-axis. So that's how it was created. And another thing to mention, in my previous tutorial bringing life to clothes in ZBrush, I didn't use this feature for the buttons. I've created the buttons later on as I was playing with the design, because I hadn't thought about the buttons while I was creating and designing the clothing inside of Marvelous. So I added them later in 3ds Max, and they have a unique oriental look to them. And the thing about it is that I've added some folds later manually, sculpting them in ZBrush. And if you watch the tutorial, you can see how I create those tiny folds. But as I mentioned a few times, if this was something for look dev or for some presentation sake, this is a great feature to simply create this custom button in any program that you're using, and then simply add them in Marvelous Designer, and then export this in the whole thing into a renderer that you're using to present your piece of work. In my case, to be honest, I don't use this feature at all. I mean the buttons inside of Marvelous, simply because every time I create something inside of Marvelous Designer, I always add a layer of I would call believability, but as you can see in the name of the tutorial, I kind of bring life into the garments. And I didn't mention this in the tutorial at all, but basically bringing life is another way of saying that I try to make the garments look more beautiful than they are inside of Marvelous. So this is just an example of either way how this feature can be used, either by simply creating them manually after everything has been created, or using the button tool inside of Marvelous Designer.